Hello, internet friends. I'm back again. I guess the whole few and far between thing is gonna be my norm. I genuinely like making YouTube videos. I like editing, I like filming, but it's really hard to do things when you have depression. Ha ha ha, ha ha. But I'm back, yay. And today I wanna talk about gender identity and what exactly that means in today's society. Before I get into everything, I want to start out by saying that I am by no means an expert. I just try my best to listen to members of the LGBTQ+ community and then share the information that has been provided to me by them. I'm gonna get into my personal feelings about gender identity and sexual orientation later in this video, but for now, I just wanted to bring attention to the fact that I am extremely privileged and blessed and lucky to be passing as a straight person and as a cisgendered person in this society. There are people with my gender identity and my sexual orientation, which I will get into later in the video, who are not passing and who do not receive the same privileges and treatment that I do as a result. There are different intersections of oppression, and I just happen to be at an intersection that carries a lot more privilege than some of the others. That's a blessing. I'm grateful for it because that means that I can use my privilege and I can use my voice to spread awareness. Now, I just mentioned different intersections of oppression. As it turns out, unfortunately, the LGBTQ+ community is home to the intersection that receives the most hate crimes, including injuries and death. Trans women of color, specifically Black trans women, are the most targeted intersection in this country, the country of America, for hate crimes that include injury and death. The fact that transphobic related hate crimes happen in such a high frequency and awareness is spread at such a low frequency is disturbing beyond words. Since I am making this video on August 22nd, I feel the need to acknowledge what happened on August 21st, I believe. I wanted to take a moment to show my respect for Reese Willoughby, who is a cisgender man who committed suicide yesterday, because he decided to be open about his relationship with a transgender woman. Online, you can find videos of him being harassed and bullied, and he was bullied into committing suicide. His name is Reese Willoughby. His girlfriend's name is Faith. This is a different incident than most, but it is still a transphobic related incident. I just wanted to make sure that I brought awareness to that in this video. Okay, so moving on. Do you know what the difference between sex and gender is? I didn't until probably a couple years ago. And no, I don't mean sex as in when a mommy and daddy really love each other. I mean sex as in the biological concept that is based on physical characteristics, such as a penis or a vagina, or XX and XY. Gender, on the other hand, is a social construct, and its intended purpose is to force each sex into one binary or the other. For example, a very basic example, boys like blue and girls like pink. These phrases, sex and gender, have been used interchangeably for who knows how long, despite having no actual correlation whatsoever other than despite having no factual correlation whatsoever, other than the correlation that society put there, of course. Think of a gender reveal party. What exactly is a gender reveal party? Well, supposedly, it's a celebration of your child-to-be's gender, right? But you couldn't possibly know somebody's gender without asking them, and fetuses can't talk. So actually what you are doing is having a sex reveal party, but it rubs people the wrong way to think about celebrating a fetus's genitals. So we call it a gender reveal party so that we can continue to reinforce the gender roles and force them upon children before they have even been born yet. And on a side note, If I ever have kids, which I'm not even sure at this point if that's ethical or moral to do with the way that the world is right now, but that's besides the point. I don't know if I would have a sex reveal party. I don't think I would. Like, why would I do that? If anything, I would have like an XX or an XY reveal party, but I would make the colors something abstract, like green for XX and yellow for XY. But I don't know, like, who cares, right? If I were to have kids, I would raise them all the same way anyway, so it's not like it matters. Something to think about. Anyway, back to the point. The thing about gender is it started out by assigning characteristics to people, as in, girls are supposed to wear dresses, boys are supposed to wear pants, girls are supposed to like dancing, boys are supposed to like football. But what that has turned into now is that we actually have started assigning genders to inanimate objects, to hobbies, to personality traits. That's why this is so complicated. We are no longer just assigning characteristics to people, we are assigning gender to objects and other non-human things. For instance, when a little boy says, "That's a girl shirt," he's not saying that shirt has a vagina, obviously. He's saying only girls should wear that shirt. But why? I will get back to that. Before I dive in on that, I want to talk about the difference between gender identity and sexual orientation, for those of you that do not know. Sexual orientation is who you are attracted to, as in homosexual, heterosexual, bisexual. Gender identity is who you are, as in transgender, cisgender, non-binary. Maybe you've never heard some of these terms before, so I will explain some of them to you. I'm sure you know that heterosexual means straight, which means you like the opposite sex. Homosexual means that you are gay, you like the same sex. Bisexual means that you are attracted to at least two, so two or more. And although all of these are very important aspects of the LGBTQ+ community, I'm gonna save the topic of sexual orientation for another video because this video is about gender identity. I just think that it is important to address both because even in the LGBTQ+ acronym, the L and the G are sexual orientations, whereas the BTQ are gender identities. So that community is all encompassing. So now on to some gender identity definitions. I'm sure a lot of you know what trans means, or transgender. That is when a person is born with one set of sexual characteristics and they transition, whether physically or otherwise. Not all trans people have the means to transition physically, and that does not make their gender identity or expression any less valid. I think it's very easy for people to invalidate the expression of people who are not completely passing. But obviously that's wrong because not everybody is financially equipped to get the surgeries needed or the medication needed to fully physically transition. And there is absolutely no way that that makes them any less valid than any trans person who does have the financial means to physically transition. So, do you know what cis means, or cisgender? A cisgender person is somebody who was born with a certain set of sexual characteristics that they just so happen to align with as they continue to grow and get older. Cisgender people make up the societal norm in America and worldwide, I think. And what about non-binary, or NB? Do you know what that is? Well, if you break down the word non-binary, these are people that don't fit into either binary. There is an incredibly wide spectrum of non-binary people. They do not all look androgynous. Many of them probably don't. Oftentimes, non-binary people will use the pronouns they, them, but not always. Personally, a non-binary world is a world that I wish we could exist in. Now, I also want to talk about intersex people, who I feel like are often forgotten about. There is a large spectrum of intersex people as well. Many intersex people have both XX and XY chromosomes, but there are many chromosome combinations. Therefore, there are dozens of types of intersex people out there. Some don't even know they're intersex. Some intersex people don't look intersex. This is why the conversations around sex and gender are so complicated, because there are not just two binaries. There are not just male and female, man and woman, boy and girl. It's not that simple. It's never been that simple. In any other aspect of nature, it's not that simple. Human beings tried to dumb it down and force binaries upon us. And I intend on dismantling that, and I hope you do too, because it's really harmful. Anyway, back to intersex people. Now, not all intersex people are trans, and not all transgender people are intersex. That being said, there's no way to know how much of the trans community is made up of intersex people. This is because of the genital mutilation that is often performed upon intersex people when they are born. At times, this happens without the parent's knowledge or consent. This procedure is unrelated to health and is only done to reinforce the gender binaries. These social constructs are causing us to mutilate babies at birth. Like I said, sometimes without the parent's knowledge or consent, all to fit them into a binary that isn't even real. Why? Why are we doing this? Sex has a basis in science. Gender does not. Sex is measurable. Gender is not. There are not only two sexes, just like there are not only two genders. Male and female are two sexes, but the intersex spectrum is so wide, and the there are only two sexes argument does not account for all of the intersex people out there. And obviously there is not only two genders, because gender isn't even real. There's not even one gender. Gender is a man-made construct. Gender is a group of ideas with no basis in fact. Gender is a forced narrative that people are conditioned to acquire. Gender is based on the perceived societal constructs of femininity and masculinity. Way more often than not, and I mean way more often than not, people subconsciously end up adhering to their gender identity without any knowledge that it has been forced upon them. Think back to the gender reveal example that I gave earlier. From literally day one, from the moment you come out of the womb, your gender has already been decided for you, and now all of the decisions that your parent is making revolve around what gender they have decided that you are. Gender constructs are anything from what colors you're supposed to like, to what careers you're supposed to have, to what life goals you're supposed to accomplish, to what toys you're supposed to play with, to what clothes you're supposed to wear, to what hobbies you're supposed to enjoy, to what people you're supposed to associate with. Even your behaviors and your mannerisms are subject to these social constructs that you have been indoctrinated into. And the craziest thing about this entire situation is that gender constructs have fluctuated and shifted hundreds and thousands of times throughout history. Even right now in 2019, if you look around the world, you will find all different social constructs, all different gender roles. Even right now, this shows us how malleable they are. This shows us how honestly fake they are. Anywhere you go in the world, they will have a different idea of what your gender means. They will have a different idea of who you are supposed to be based on what genitals you have. There are so many countries in this world, and hardly any of them can even agree on what the gender construct should be. So why do we have gender constructs? The best example of this is that high heels, the color pink, wigs, makeup, skirts and dresses all used to be traditionally masculine. Not even androgynous, but masculine. Now, however many years later, all of these things are traditionally feminine and feminine only. How could that possibly be so? What switched things up that much? And why? And how? And who cares? The thing about gender roles is they are not only harmful to people that want to exist far out of the gender binary. They are harmful to everyone, even if you happen to align with the gender and the sex that you were assigned at birth. They are harmful to all of us. You don't have to be radical to know that boys do cry. Women don't always have to be modest. Men are not always the breadwinners, and women are not always the caretakers. All of these statements might seem obvious, but when you take them and you apply them to society on a greater scale, people aren't acting like these statements are true. Instead, we see men afraid to cry, women afraid to express their sexuality, men pressured to make more money, and women pressured to stay home and take care of the kids. The bottom line is sex is nature. Gender is nurture. And I'm very, very tired of these words being used interchangeably. They have absolutely nothing to do with each other. The only correlation is a man-made correlation. And it is not at all helpful to us. It's actually extremely harmful to us. So what's the point? Let's stop. So now that we got all that out of the way, I want to tell you what I think. So as I said earlier, I wish we all could live in a non-binary world. I personally do consider myself non-binary. I like the term pronoun indifferent. I use it a lot. As of right now, with the way that reality is, I suppose I would consider myself more pronoun indifferent. As in, I literally could not possibly care less about what you call me. Doesn't matter, don't care. But honestly, I only take that stance because of the way that society is right now. If we lived in Mariah's perfect world, I would just be non-binary. I am so disconnected from gender and what gender means that I cannot even possibly fathom putting energy into caring what somebody wants to refer to me as. But once again, as I stated at the very beginning of this video, that is because I'm lucky enough to exist in a cisgender passing body. The thing about being non-binary is really only extremely woke people even know what non-binary is, and that's very few people. And even fewer people are accustomed to regularly using the pronouns they/them. Even I am not super great at that because we live in a cis-centered world, meaning obviously a world that focuses explicitly on cisgender people. Although it's hard for me to use gender-neutral terms, I try every day, and I encourage you all to try every day as well. It's important to stop the assertion that he and she are the only two ways to refer to somebody. The only two ways to exist, he and she. It's just not true. All that being said, sometimes I even doubt my own gender identity. I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure other people also feel this way. It sucks. Sometimes I look in the mirror and I look at what I'm wearing or the way my body is, and I think to myself, bitch, you can't possibly be non-binary. You look like a woman. And then that's when my brain is like, shut the fuck up. That's the social construct talking. There is no way to look like a woman. There is a way to have tits and a vagina, but that doesn't make you a woman. There's a way to wear makeup and dresses, but that doesn't make you a woman. The only thing that makes you a woman is feeling like a woman. And I don't feel like a woman or a girl. I feel like something else that can't be explained in the terminology that we have in today's society. Even non-binary doesn't feel right because I just don't feel like anything. I just feel like we're all just people. Like, that's so corny. When I say that, I'm like, ugh, cringe. We're all just people. But like, that's how I feel. I just understand that it's not realistic to act like that's true right now, because right now there are intersections of oppression and we are not all just treated like people. That's why labels have to come into play. But in Mariah's perfect world, they wouldn't exist at all. We would just be people. The thing about gender being a social construct is that when you take away the social construct, you realize that physical appearance doesn't actually have to correlate to what your identity is. Another issue is, I was raised as a girl. I was raised as a girl to be a woman. That's how my parents raised me. That's how society brought me up. Only a couple years ago did I start questioning gender and sex. And only about 1 year ago did I even realize that I might not be a cisgender person. And only a few months ago did I think to myself, I might be non-binary. And through these last 6 months or so of processing, it becomes a lot more obvious to me that I am non-binary. I'm not a woman or a girl. I'm just me. I'm just Mariah. But obviously, since I was raised as a girl to be a woman and all of this self-reflection is relatively recent, this is already who I am. This is already who I have become. And perhaps through more self-reflection, my outside physical appearance might change. Perhaps I might shift to a more androgynous look. I don't know. I'm not actively planning on doing that. It might happen. I don't know. Regardless of whether it happens or not isn't really relevant because, again, your physical appearance and your identity are not correlated. have nothing to do with each other. As I touched on, I would love to be referred to as they, them. That's what feels comfortable. I cringe every time someone calls me a girl. I really do. It makes me feel weird. But honestly, I would love it if everybody was they, them, because I also feel weird when anybody calls anybody a girl or a boy or whatever. But it's so ingrained in this society. It's so normalized that even I still do it, you know? I just wish that we could all identify ourselves as more gender neutral. I wish we could all be a little bit less focused on what your gender means about you. Every time any of us uses a gendered pronoun, we are just playing into this construct, this harmful construct. Every single time we say he or she when we don't know that person's gender, we're playing into the idea that this is a cis-centered world. That being said, we are all hopelessly indoctrinated into this society from day one, from before day one, actually. And rarely do people ever realize that. And the people that do realize that are still surrounded by a bunch of people that don't. So it's very, very difficult for myself and for, I'm sure, a lot of people. It's very, very difficult to change your speech pattern. It's something that you have to work on. When you see somebody, no matter what they look like, if you don't know them and you don't know their gender, try just calling them they, them. Don't say he or she, say they, them. Practice. It helps, like a lot actually. The thing about this society is it has trained us to see visuals and assign a gender to them. So when somebody looks more androgynous, it's easier to call them they, them. When somebody looks traditionally feminine, you are more urged to call them she, regardless of what their gender actually is. And same for traditionally masculine people. You are urged by society, by habit, to call them he, even if you don't know how they identify. And every time I question myself, I then just remind myself that gender is fake and this is a process to unconditioning yourself. I am 20 years old, and that means that I have lived 20 years in a cis-centered society. That means that I have lived 20 years being indoctrinated by gender roles. So think how hard it is for people that are older than me to accept this new information, which actually isn't even new because people of the LGBTQ+ community have always been here and always will be here, but it's new to society. So you have to think, these are decades upon decades upon decades of people that have been living in a cis-centered world and have no idea what any of this means and are just very confused and trying to figure it out. Now, I'm not trying to make excuses for them because being confused gives you absolutely no right to be actively oppressing somebody or perpetuating the systems of harm that are put in place. But it must also be hard to try to understand something that is so brand new after living such a long life of having no idea that it even existed. Like I said, I wish we could all just be a little bit more or a lot more gender neutral. Personally, I believe that that would make it way easier for people to participate in self-expression free of judgment, you know? The binaries force you to pick a side. What if you didn't have to pick a side? What if you had both sides available to you? If you're a boy who has always been forced into the binary of sports and your father never ever let you dance, think of how that's gonna shape you as a person. What if you hated sports? What if you just wanted to dance, but you can't because your dad doesn't think it's manly enough? And what if you're a little girl who wants to be president, but your mom teaches you that it's your job to find a nice man and have a family? Well, what if you never even go to college because you think there's no chance of ever becoming president or anything like that because you think it's your job to have kids? Think about how that's going to shape someone. Those are some extreme examples, and even the less extreme examples have detrimental consequences. Not to mention, it's not just one example here and one example there. Our entire society is shaped around these gender roles. It's not as simple as, oh, we'll start encouraging girls to play more sports, because the entire system is flawed. It needs to be fundamentally restored from the ground up. It needs a complete overhaul. There is no room for putting band-aids on bullet holes in this situation. Gender and sex inequality go way beyond the wage gap debate. So despite wishing that we could live in a gender-neutral world, because I am aware of reality right now as it is, I know that most people, especially strangers and people who don't understand gender and sex issues, are just gonna call me she, her. and I rarely have the emotional energy to constantly correct and educate people, especially because I am so femme-aligned, so I'm even more confusing to some people who really wish non-binary people could just all look androgynous or, quote, look trans, which is a transphobic rhetoric all on its own, because like I was saying earlier, there's no way to look like a woman, there's no way to look trans. We're all just people. We are all people, period, at the end of that statement. People look like people, period, at the end of that statement as well. But calling me a woman or a girl or she or her is just an extreme norm. And since I do fit into society's narrow idea of what a woman looks like, if you're not totally educated on the subject, you just won't understand. So usually I just tell my friends to use whatever pronouns make them comfortable, because I don't always feel like explaining why I'm not a girl. On my Instagram, I have they/them in my bio, and it is very appreciated when people respect that. The thing about gendered terms is they go beyond just she and he. They also include ways to describe people like daughter, husband, sister, mother, father. Those are all gendered terms. And I know to my mother, I'm always gonna be her daughter. To my siblings, I'm always gonna be their sister. And to my boyfriend, I'm always gonna be his girlfriend. Not because these people intend on disrespecting my gender identity, but because it's so normalized in our society to use these gendered terms. And because when you've thought of somebody one way for years and years on end, it's very hard to automatically start thinking of them in a different way, especially if they haven't altered their physical appearance in any way whatsoever, like me. Similarly, I'm always going to be welcomed into the women's bathroom in public, and I'm never going to be welcomed into the men's bathroom, and that is because I am currently passing as a cis woman. Nobody cares what I think about my gender identity. They care about how I look. I look like society's version of a woman. So at this point in my life, and again, this is a privilege, my gender identity is my own personal business, and I get to know the truth. If other people want to join me on my gender journey, that's amazing, but none of you are obligated. None of you have to understand. None of you even have to pretend to try to want to understand. I don't really care. As of right now, specifically because I am not the most oppressed intersection, so I am not the person that y'all should be worried about right now. We should be putting our focus on the most oppressed intersection, which, of course, in America, the most oppressed intersection in America is trans women of color, specifically Black trans women. Since I do have the privilege to basically say, fuck all of you, my gender is my business, I'm okay with understanding on the inside that I am not a woman, or a man, or a boy, or a girl, or a he, or a she. I'm just a person with a vagina and big tits. And that's how I feel comfortable. I can't help the body that I was born in. I can't help the fact that I was raised as a girl. I can just tell you how I feel now. But I do want to stress over and over again that it is extremely important to remember that I am privileged and blessed and lucky to be able to just ignore what other people want to say about my gender identity. Because as of right now, my life is not at risk as a result of my gender identity. There are so many members of the LGBTQ+ community whose lives are actively at risk. People who don't pass have a way increased risk of harassment, assault, and death. I've been lucky on numerous occasions because I am a female passing non-binary person and I am a straight passing pansexual person. There was a time back when I still identified as a girl when I was with other girls or trans people, but at this point in my life I've been in a relationship with a cis man for 3.5 years who I intend on staying with forever. So as of right now, I am a cis passing NB and a straight passing pansexual. And I mean, shit, to be in the spectrum at all, that's a pretty good place to be sitting, because I can use my privilege to hopefully educate and call out all the bullshit stereotypes that we have to follow. So as always, these were my opinions. I hope you fucked with them. If I got anything wrong, please let me know. I did do research for this video. I will tag some things below that you can look into, including the article about Reese Willoughby, the cisgender man who recently committed suicide as a result of bullying and harassment when he came out about his relationship with a transgender woman. So I will link that below, along with some other websites about sex and gender. Please correct me if I'm wrong, please. I don't want to be spreading false information, and if there's anything that I said wrong, I will add it in the description below as comments come in. So yeah, I really hope this was beneficial to you. I hope that I didn't get too much wrong. I hope this was informative. I hope you can share this with people who maybe don't understand. All right, make sure you like this video if you liked it. Make sure you subscribe if you think I'm cool. I talk about politics, I do makeup, I do hair. I have 3 pets and they're usually in my videos. I share my opinions, and if you care about what they are, you should subscribe. Right, Violet? You ready? You can say subscribe? Subscribe to my channel. I put out new videos as often as I can. Okay. Subscribe! I hope you guys have a nice day or week or life. Hope you guys are doing good. Hope you guys are doing great.